Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Mr. Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak. It's our Week 5 preview show where we're going to break down every game and every fantasy relevant player on the slate. That includes the Ravens at the Bengals, the Bills at the Texans, the Saints at the Chiefs, the Royals at the Yankees, the Tigers at the Guardians. Because, we've all got baseball in the brain. We're going to get to football in just a minute. Every game, every player. I'm in hell over here because I'm going viral. Here's what people think going viral is cool. It's not cool at all.
Oh, it's horrible.
I had a tweet that said MLB accidentally stumbling upon the most disastrous playoff format in the history of sports, LOL, or LOL, as I like to say. And people, for a lot of agreement, people are liking the tweet in droves. I thought that was good. But then people are quote tweeting it, quote unquote, and quote replying to it. And a lot of people think that I'm wrong about this, even though I'm so right. And Kyle, by the way, has baseball thoughts too. He just finished a fantasy baseball season and has some thoughts to share on our nation's pastime. What are those, Kyle?
Yeah, I am, just a long-time listener to the show, long-time listener to the show because the baseball season is that long. We'll remember Pat sort of co-opted me into my first and God willing last season as a
strong-armed you is a relevant phrase there. I strong-armed you into joining.
Yeah, I think coercive would be maybe one way to describe how the process of you getting me to do it. Our season obviously just ended and the regular season.
Curious here, it says you like being employed, and then you said you don't want to do the fantasy baseball. That's interesting.
That's like Pat's not doing a joke. He's reading from the transcript that my lawyers have sent over. I've taken a lesson from Denny and I've lawyered up. I honestly, I was going to say I had fun, mostly because for 2/3 of the baseball season, otherwise known as 16 months, I was in second place. I felt pretty good about having drafted a good team, being in second place. And then over the final quarter of the season, which was 20 months, my team fell apart and I ended up at a perfectly mediocre 5th place. It was fine. I will note, and Denny, long time listener to the show, will remember this. Denny clocked it quite early on. That, as it turns out, this is just who pays the most attention. And Pat forced me into a league about a sport I don't care about. And the goal is who pays the most attention.
Yeah.
And how do I know this? If you go to our league and you sort by transactions, you will see who transacted the most, who added, dropped, et cetera. And that order would give you the standings of our league in first, second, third place exactly. Right. Whoever interacted the most finished first, second, and then third. I do not like this format.
Fantasy baseball, I'm going to be serious here for a second. Fantasy football is the people's game, blah, blah, blah. You can win in fantasy football without ever making a move, though. That can be a problem. Like, say you just have good injury luck.
Perfect.
Fantasy baseball is amazing because it is actually possible to fix your roster. It's not all about injuries. Like, if your second-round pick gets injured in April, he broke another hamate bone. How many hamate bones does this guy have? You can actually fix your team and still contend. One thing I love about fantasy baseball. Denny, by the way, you love the playoff format where some of the best teams are eliminated from the MLB playoffs before they even begin, right?
Okay, yeah. So the other day when I realized that the MLB playoffs had started, which there was no indication that they had started.
It was 3 innings into the Orioles game that you were like, oh, this is it.
I mean, none. Like, I didn't see one ad. I didn't hear one thing on TV. I live in Maryland, had no idea the Orioles were in the playoffs, but I decided to become an Orioles fan for life, and I said, okay, I'm gonna be an Orioles guy. And so I watched the first game and they got unlucky, and I watched the second game and they got unlucky, and now I'm out. And this stinks. 2 out of 3.
Yeah, no, 2 out of 3 is.
I actually couldn't believe it. I actually thought, well, the announcers don't realize this is a 3 out of 5.
Well, here's the deal: the baseball season is very short, though. So it's kind of a best of 3. That's just a really good way to put a capstone on a 162 game season.
I was gonna ask you because I knew it was 100. I was gonna guess like 150, and I would have been
194 low. Actually, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's as if they're like, we simply don't have enough time. We've used 11.9 months out of the year to play baseball. We're out of time to play baseball. Playoffs got to be quick. Wrap them up. They really should do it. Like the Premier League, right? Just tables.
They actually should. They used to do that. I won't go that far. I have a lot of thoughts on it, But talk about someone who needs to wrap up their season. It's us talking about baseball. We promise we're going to talk about football now. That very much includes the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. The only total this week, over 50. And everyone's complaining about baseball. Remember, like they don't score in baseball. Hey, remember when a 50.5 total would be like one of 4 50-plus totals?
I do remember.
And when there didn't used to be 5 games, like now I see like 35.5. Like that seems kind of high for the Patriots. Remember that when they used to score in the NFL? The Ravens and Bengals kind of remember that. They've been scoring. They graced us with the only game with the decency to provide a total north of 50, Denny. It's a topic we've already talked about a lot this week, but fantasy managers are melting down about the Ravens' run-heavy approach and the Orioles' playoff elimination and the lack of targets for Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. Is there any reason to expect things to be different this week in old Cincinnati town?
Seems like the Orioles should have taken a run-heavy approach, if you know what I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah, they should have simply scored more runs against the mid-Royals. Good luck, Royals, and losing 4-0 to the Yankees.
3-0, but yeah.
3?
Yeah. 1-0. This is actually the next one. Just one
yeah,
game,
they actually get
1-0.
shorter. It's best of 1. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. it's whoever's leading after the first inning wins. All right. Yeah. So no, there's nothing to look forward to. There are no prospects for Andrews, or really, I don't think any other pass catcher in the Ravens.
Yeah, no one's talking about Zay. Everyone's like, oh man, Mark Andrews can't even catch a pass. I don't know. Can Zay Flowers go for 25 yards? I was told he was good.
Well, no, I mean so Todd Monken liked the taste of the super run heavy stuff that he got 2 weeks ago against Dallas,
and it's just not working.
And
well, I was going to say, Pat, for a Zay hater and a Derrick Henry lover, you should be happy with this. You should be like, oh, this is great. Because I think if I remember the summer correctly, we were telling you Derrick Henry doesn't matter, never good. You were like, they just got to run the football 40 times a game. Hope your Zay Flowers shares are happy because you got exactly what you paid for.
I was right, but at what cost, Denny?
Exactly.
Yeah. So after the crazy week 1 where Lamar dropped back a bunch, Lamar is 22nd in dropbacks over the past 3 weeks. He's averaging 24 dropbacks per game, 17 throws per game. They're way under their expected dropback rate as a team. I just like they are not going to pass the ball unless they absolutely have to. And Mark Andrews is not getting open and he is dropping balls. I mean, like I said last week, I was starting Taysom Hill over Mark Andrews without blinking. I'm doing it again this week.
Well, that's if Taysom even plays.
I mean, whatever. Yeah.
The thing is, it wouldn't matter because Mark Andrews is zeroing us every week. So it's just a draw.
The Bengals, man, I couldn't remember. God, they're awful on the ground. It's over, man. The Ravens are never throwing another pass. The Bengals run defense. Right. They're allowing 150 yards rushing a game.
No, they're going to get gouged. I mean, this is a 200-yard spot for Henry. Yeah.
I said in my rankings piece this week, 350 yards for Derrick Henry over the past 2 weeks. Safe to say it's his best 2-game stretch of the season. And they're facing a team that allows 150 yards rushing.
Yeah.
And Derrick Henry. I take it back. I wish I had never said anything good about Derrick Henry because this is awful. It's absolutely awful. Kyle, is it fair to say we started to get the Bengals offense we were expecting over the summer? They're at least holding up their end of the scoring bargain. Joe Burrow, kind of like the only pure pocket passer, I feel like, holding up his end of the bargain right now. Do we like what we're seeing out of the Cincinnati offense?
Yeah, I think you put it pretty appropriately. It's just this is finally what we're getting what we drafted these guys for. Burrow is 3rd in EPA per play over the past 2 weeks, 6th in CPOE. T. Higgins hasn't quite given us the breakout game, but we are tantalizingly close. A 32%.
He'll never break out. Don't lie about T. I mean, he'll never.
Look, you look back at his box scores and you say dud. Oh my God, 160. Only 10% of ESPN drafters started him that week, but 160 immediate dud. He's fancy Gabe Davis, but we are on the precipice of the good Gabe Davis game for a player who is admittedly definitely better than Gabe Davis. 32% target share last week, 60% of the air yards. That's kind of my only one qualm with the team is that, Pat, you've actually talked about this, and I couldn't agree more, is that sometimes you got to let a great player be great. Can we get Jamar Chase one downfield target? His ADOT is down again. It is down year over year over year. And you look back, and his most efficient season was his rookie season, and he's been down in terms of yards per out run ever since. Still very good numbers, but like he's Vince McMahon meme. He was special back then, and he's just been very good since then. And I do think this is the one team that, like, you got to take some risks and not entirely capitulate to the too high, which they have done entirely. Joe Burrow, as Denny has pointed out, is one of the most conservative quarterbacks against too high. I don't know, man. Let Jamar Chase be a superstar every now and then. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that, albeit he's also really good with the ball in his hands, so it works enough.
Ravens are top 5 in too high safety usage. It's check downs all day in this one.
Jamar Chase check down to Jamar. Like he has yet to clear 7 targets in a game.
Well, I think the pass volume. Well, I actually mentioned this game in the funnel report, which will be out tomorrow. I like the pass volume to be pretty big for the Bengals.
Do you guys have any quick thoughts on Zach Moss versus Chase Brown? Where Moss was still the strong side of the committee in week 4, but it was definitely like a true committee for the first time. Any thoughts on that, Denny Carter? I'm just going to put you on the spot.
It seems like the team is leaning a little bit in Brown's direction because Brown has been uber efficient. Imagine that. He was last year. As well. Zach Moss hasn't been bad necessarily, but the thing is, like, we're just wish casting if we're saying that Chase Brown's going to take over as the clear 1A option because Zach Moss is still running a lot of routes and still seeing more targets in this offense, and that's kind of what matters.
That's the real problem. Is Zach Moss? You would just think Zach Moss, early down banger. He's going to get the short yardage stuff between the 20 stuff. No, he's running lots of routes. It's quite bad. He's blocking our guy Chase and every down, but Chase made inroads last week. We'll see what happens. Maybe he can start Bucky Irvining the situation. The Minnesota Vikings and New York Jets head to London town with a total struggling to reach 40 because of these teams' strong defensive plays so far. Kyle, Sam Darnold keeps acing every test thrown his way, and fantasy managers are kind of itching to get him into the top 12 at quarterback with so many other players struggling. Is that a realistic hope this week, the top 12 against this really strong Jets pass defense that has not been amongst Gangrene's problem to begin the season?
Yeah, we've seen him get the can you beat a good defense test once this year against the 49ers. And the only reason he didn't punish them in terms of putting up a 30 fantasy point game was, per usual, the defense kept the 49ers in check, but he had another really strong performance against them. Last year, they were inside the top 10 in EPA per dropback allowed. They were just slightly behind the Jets. This year, I believe the Jets are 6th in EPA per dropback allowed. They've also faced, if I remember correctly, Jacoby Brissett, Bo Nix, and I believe they got a Miami backup in there as well. They also have played the 49ers, so one good team. But realistically, I think they're on the same caliber as the 49ers, which we've already seen Sam Darnold pass that test. So I'm going to say until further notice, you can just pencil him in as a QB1 with the real limiting factor not being his play or the team's play calling tendencies, because they are unleashing him in situation neutral, as they just don't play situation neutral very often. They play we're up 20 very often. And we just saw this Jets team fail to put up 10 points against the Broncos. This total feels right, and it feels like that's going to be what holds Sam Darnold back from throwing from 300. He might not even come close because he might not have to.
Yep. Again, I never thought the Vikings would be too good for Justin Jefferson to have 100 yards. Do we totally bail on Sam Darnold, by the way, if he has a bad game? Like he actually starts taking sacks?
No, because the team, the defense is good enough. The run game is good enough. He has Justin Jefferson, where I think he can overcome like a meltdown, and he will have a meltdown eventually. I know Pat's been desperately waiting for it for a month now. Just cannot.
9 good games in a row. And actually, I was like 160 yards. I was told Sam Darnold was a different player this year.
I mean, Pat wakes up at 3 a.m. and he's like, I can't wait to bury Darnold if he throws one interception this week.
I gotta be honest.
They're fitting Darnold for his gold jacket. They're fitting Darnold for the gold jacket. Pat's outside throwing tomatoes. The meltdown's coming.
I'm all in on the Sam Assance because I got Justin Jefferson in every league. I just never thought that he would be too good. Never thought he'd be
and also the Jets are the second most extreme run funnel, so they're going to run it a lot here.
Speaking of the Jets, Denny, what is the Jets' overall offensive approach looking like through 4 highly inconsistent games, sitting at 2-2, have played a lot of really good defenses, and seemingly every time we look at the Jets schedule, like why are they playing the 85 Bears in week 8, like the 2000 Ravens, then in week 9? Like I feel like the schedule maker should have eased up a little bit. Really brutal stretch for this Jets team. What's the approach looking like?
I'm glad you asked me this because I have some thoughts on the Jets offense. You know, it's a very typical Nathaniel Hackett offense where it all hinges on the players making amazing plays over and over and over, and the system stinks. and it cannot be relied upon, especially in critical situations or like obvious pass situations per se. Aaron Rodgers is actually playing really well. The whole offense, or basically the whole passing game, relies on hero ball from a 40-year-old quarterback who's coming off an Achilles, and perfect coordination and chemistry between him and Garrett Wilson, of which there is none so far through a month. I mean, Garrett Wilson came out this week. He said, look, like, I've seen other teams play. I watch football on Sundays. I would like that for myself. You know, Lord, I see what you've done for others. I would like that as well.
Or I see what you've done for Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right. And so I think there's a brewing frustration there that's going to boil over eventually. Anyway, speaking of Garrett Wilson, targeted on 22% of his routes. That's down from 25% over his first 2 seasons. Jets are 22nd in dropback success rate over the past 2 weeks. They're 25th in yards per carry. And they're 20th in rush EPA. Their run game is really, really bad. They're actually, and it's a little nerdy, but stick with me. They're dead last by a long shot in yards created before contact in the run game. And that's usually indicative of a poor offensive line. So I think the offensive line is becoming an issue, not only for Rodgers, who was hit, I think, 14 times last week, and sacked at least 4 times. It's also an issue for Breece Hall and for Braylon Allen.
Yeah, so Kyle, Breece Hall, 3.1 yards per carry, 0.4 yards per carry. And week 4, he's been above 3 and 3.4 yards per carry 1 time in 4 games. Braylon Allen, of course, has been more efficient so far, maybe even more explosive. People are understandably panicking a little bit. Robert Saleh does come out Wednesday night and reaffirm Breece Hall as the primary goal line back. What is the latest on as the Breece and Braylon turns?
Yeah, the past 2 weeks, we've seen a little bit of a different split in that I think they just understandably didn't know entirely what they had in Braylon Allen in the first 2 weeks. More recently, he's gotten his role up, and in turn, that has to come from someone. It obviously comes with Breece's role coming down. He's only gotten 53% of the carries and run 56% of the routes in the past 2 weeks. That was 75% and 67% in weeks 1 and 2. He was the entirety of the backfield as far as this is what we see from a modern workhorse running back over the first 2 weeks. And then as soon as Braylon Allen shows a little bit of juice, they're like, we got to get this guy the ball more. And you understand that. He deserves to get the ball more, even if it has to come at the expense of someone we really like for fantasy purposes. And then the flip side of that coin is Breece hasn't been the most explosive, most efficient. And I think this is a situation where Breece's style is early career Saquon Barkley. His stats don't look good until the moment he hits a 90-yard touchdown, which, like, if you're betting on anyone to do that, he's in the top 5 and he's going to have a long touchdown. But that means with a lessened role, the valleys are going to be a little bit deeper, I think. I still have no problem ranking him as a top 6, top 5 fantasy running back. But I think in most weeks, you're probably not guaranteed to put him at RB1, which if you told me a few weeks ago, obviously Christian McCaffrey is out. I'm like, well, I can pretty much just pencil in Breece as RB1. That's just not the case.
I think you made a really good comparison there with Saquon Barkley, where, you know, the explosive play potential, the pass game prowess, the touchdown potential, when he's going to deliver huge at some point, you just cannot count on it any given week. You have to rank him in the high end RB1 ranks, because at the end of the season, that's where the numbers will be.
Yes,
I believe. Yeah, it's more frustrating experience than it should be. Jordan Addison had a really big game in his week 4 return, touchdown through the air, touchdown on the ground, only 4 targets though. Is he the kind of player who can maybe provide wide receiver 3, maybe high end wide receiver 4 returns on unlimited usage, because he's going to rip big plays, get really good looks opposite Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, yes. Also, I don't expect the pass volume to be there this week for Minnesota. So we're looking at another 3 or 4 target day for Jordan Addison. He was targeted on just 10% of his pass routes last week. You know, so don't get, you know, too transfixed by the couple touchdowns. Oh, you know, it's nice. You'll take that. You take that in best ball. Okay, better in best ball, that sort of thing. A.dot of 17. Way higher than his A.dot last season. It'll come down naturally as the season wears on. The usage is that of a very high variance play, and just know that going in. I would try to avoid him though.
High variance wide receiver 4, I would say, is the perfect home for him. You actually can start him. Yeah. He might win. He might win your matchup, but he might be also one of the contributing reasons that you lose it. The Jaguars and Colts meet up in the mystery game of the week, with it being unclear who might be under center for the Colts and who might be healthy for the Jaguars. Then I can't remember who's hurt on the Jags. Then we've already heard a lot from you about the Colts offense this week. But what about if Jonathan Taylor sits? Could Trey Sermon be a plug-and-play RB2? I bet you thought I was going to ask you about the quarterbacks. I asked you about the running backs instead.
I knew you were going to ask me about the running backs because I read the show sheet.
You can read.
And, so, hey, here's the thing. Trey Sermon is the only other Indianapolis running back to see a touch this season outside of Jonathan Taylor. It's a small sample size. It's 10 touches, but he looks pretty good according to the nerdy running back metrics. So I think that he would work as the workhorse if Jonathan Taylor were out and Taylor's not practicing. If he misses practice on Friday completely, I think that you can pencil in Sermon as a really like a viable plug and play guy.
I'd say he's the low end. He's a plug and play RB2, but at the low end variety. Because just kind of wondering, there's so many variables with this.
Yeah, there are. If Flacco starts, it's way better for Sermon.
Well, is it? I don't know. I think Tyler Goodson actually is going to get some targets, I think, behind Trey Sermon, even though he hasn't done anything yet. I think Tyler Goodson will be available. Yeah, it's just hard to know what to tell people about this Colts offense. Anthony Richardson got a token limited practice Wednesday. They said he was very sore, kind of like reading between the lines that he's going to have to show a lot of like health progress in the next 2 days to actually play. We'll see what the heck's going on there because it's hard to tell people what to do with the Colts because we know if it's Joe Flacco, Michael Pittman's back in the top 20. Josh Downs is in the top 40. If it's Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman's on that wide receiver 3 borderline, even with 4 teams on bye. Kyle, am I crazy to say on the other side of the ball that Brian Thomas Jr.'s early profile looks like that of a wide receiver 1?
Look, I am, as the resident Zoomer here, I am generally on board with all of the players under, let's call it 25 or whatever, just in summer drafts, just don't even show me their stats. Don't show me anything, their age. And I'm like, especially wide receiver, that's obviously a first round rookie. I'm in. I will say wide receiver 1, let's temper expectations a little bit. Right now, he is.
I'm just saying that's what the profile looks like on paper right now when you look at Brian Thomas.
40th in target share. He's 44th in air yard share. He is not getting target or air yards dominance. He's getting efficiency dominance, and that should, especially for a young player, lead to more opportunities. I mean, that's the perfect
getting efficiency dominance and leading to raw statistical dominance. I think he's 13th in like receiver yard, like not overall receiving yards, but amongst receivers, he's like almost in the top 12. So he's being really efficient, actually turning it into production. Even if he's not turning it into like air yard dominance, he's turning into actual yard production where he's almost in the top 12, Kyle.
Especially on a team where we think, I mean, look, there's a lot of players who talked about this summer that we don't need to litigate anymore. One of them was Trevor Lawrence, and I think all of us are quite underwhelmed. But if you're
trying to find out who was right about Trevor Lawrence on this show.
Well, to the point I'm trying to make is if you're 40th in target share in the NFL, just among wide receivers, and you play with a quarterback as bad as Trevor Lawrence, you are going to be running unsustainably hot if you are a wide receiver. If we're calling you a wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes, he needs to parlay this extreme efficiency, which he's really freaking good at football. He will do this, but he needs to parlay it into a larger share of the offense if these numbers are going to hold.
The good news there, before Denny jumps in, is that he's the kind of player that will do that. I mean, it's a first round pick who's been efficient. Typically, they begin to command more work. Denny.
Yeah, just real quick, 14% of the throws against the Colts have been over 20 yards. That's the top 5 rate in the league. So teams are attacking them deep, and that's all that this Jacksonville offense is about. It's about Trevor Lawrence just dropping back and just throwing it downfield, and when it hits. It hits, and when it doesn't, the offense completely stalls and is one of the worst in the league. So if Brian Thomas is gonna have a big day, it's probably here, honestly.
I mean, I have another stat on this. The Colts lead the NFL in cover 3, and you'll never believe it. Brian Thomas, second in the NFL in yards per route run against cover 3. Gus Bradley's run cover 3 for his entire career, and he does not change that. Brian Thomas is eating it up so far. It's a small sample, but it checks out. I think he's really good at football. So to Denny's point about the way this Colts defense plays football, it's a matchup made in heaven for Brian Thomas. So as much as I want to pump the brakes on the nerd target share, his cut of the pie doesn't look great. He's in the start-sit column this week, and he's on a start. You better believe.
Yeah, you got to start him.
Yes.
You do have to start him. I was so confused by my own intro where I said, we don't even know who's going to be healthy for the Jags. I couldn't remember who it was. Well, Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram.
They have Evan Ingram, who looks like he's returning. He's limited in practice to start the week. That's a good sign. Travis, I was about to say Trevor Etienne too.
I can't remember his name's Travis or Trevor anymore.
You Inception planted that into my mind, and now I'm going to start doing it. Travis Etienne got banged up last week in the middle of the game with shoulder injury. He came back. He's practicing, and Bigsby has been banged up for a week or two, but he was great last week, and he's practicing. So I think they're pretty much full strength as far as they're all playing. I don't know how healthy.
Well, he was limited on Wednesday. Evan Ingram, hamstrings are tricky. We've seen a lot of guys think we're going to come back and then have not done so this year. It's kind of been the year of the aspirational injury report. I'm listing where Evan Ingram will throw in a wrench into. He played one game, and it was a bad game too. If he comes back, we could see totally new patterns because Christian Kirk's been dominating the past 2 weeks too, actually. Evan Ingram's return, definitely something to watch for there. And Denny, anything on the Jags backfield, by the way? We mentioned Etienne's banged up. It seems like he's going to play. Tank Bigsby, this is like a trend this year. Like RB2 is like, I'm going to take a bigger job and take a bigger role. And like they're kind of like standing there jumping, like doing like high knees, and then they just stay around like 20% of the snaps. They never actually take a bigger role.
Yeah, well, I mean, last week Bigsby ripped off that big 58-yarder. Etienne led in carries 10-7, which is not really all that great for Etienne. I think Bigsby, when healthy, is going to be slightly behind Etienne as the 1B or maybe just the RB2 here. He suffered that injury, but before that, it kind of looked like Bigsby's season, right? I do want to shout out everyone who is pulling up my old tweets on Tank Bigsby. That's been fun.
Those were all descriptive. They were telling you what happened last year.
They were.
And no one should try and relitigate the fact that he wasn't good last year. That's not up for debate. He's playing great football this year, and it's okay for both things to be true.
That's true.
And to the RB point, I actually do think it's been a pretty Zach Moss is the starter. Yeah, dude, that lasted like 3 weeks, and now he's in a full-blown committee. Travis Etienne's our guy. Yeah, like 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Rachaad White, he's the guy. We're just scheming up touches for Bucky Irving. 4 weeks into the season, Bucky Irving, he's getting goal line work. Like, these things take time, but they're honestly not taking that long, in my opinion.
Yeah, Etienne last week, only 40% of the routes. His role is just really tenuous. I feel like you should start him, but man, it's not a great.
It's tenuous, but Bigsby's not sealing the deal. Bigsby already might have missed a shot to seal the deal. I feel like
he just ripped off a 50-something yarder last week.
Yeah, what did he do on the other 7 carries?
Bro,
he was like 2 yards total.
I think Bigsby's probably better than Etienne.
No, he's not. Bigsby's still bad. Don't worry.
I should say it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It was running back skill doesn't matter, but I do think for whatever it's worth,
Bigsby has looked like a very improved player this year. Bigsby is maybe actually good. The Bills and Texans meet up in Houston with forecasted near shootout conditions, Kyle Dvorchak. The Texans have a lot of injury moving parts, but we will begin in the receiver core. Will Steph Diggs approach wide receiver 1 territory in this revenge contest? I said if Tank Dell sits again, kind of seems like Tank Dell is going to play. But I mean, the revenge game narrative can be a bit overplayed. I mean, Steph Diggs probably said, "I'm not coming to Houston unless you give me 20 targets against the Bills." Yeah. So what do we think is going on with the Texans wide receivers this week?
Yeah, I mean, last week they, as you pointed out, didn't have Tank Dell, and it was a fine game for Stefon Diggs, but a 23% target share, 21% air yard share. He's been used primarily as an underneath option. I think it's very clear that Nico Collins is just such a certified stud that there is absolutely no room for there may be like a 1A, 1B, or this team can support 2 wide receiver 1s. It's Nico Collins' world. We're all living in it. He's the one who's getting the chunk plays, middle of the field, down the field, and he's incredibly good at generating those big plays in an era of football right now where very few receivers can actually just go downfield and win one-on-one or get open and not have to be one-on-one 15, 20, 30 plus yards downfield. And I think that is really what we're seeing with Nico Collins is the reason I think he's probably the best bet right now to finish the season as the wide receiver 1 overall, is that he wins in a way that currently not a lot of receivers do, and you just feed that guy the ball. So I think, one, that's not ideal for Stefon Diggs. It also does have me a little worried about Tank Dell coming back because Diggs is good in his own right too. When you have a true alpha wide receiver 1 and Diggs, who I still think would be a wide receiver 1 on a lot of other teams, I want to buy low on Tank Dell because I also think he's good at football, but you do just have to divvy up the target share somewhere, and he might be on the short end of the stick.
I think Dell is definitely on the short end of the stick. I have him outside of the top 36 this week right now. Diggs, I actually, this is the rare revenge game where like mean, they're going to be shoveling this guy the ball. I feel like they're going to be shoveling this guy.
And so, with structurally, that makes sense. Houston leads the league in 2 high coverage, right? They're going to guard against the big downfield Nico play, right? And they're going to say, like, yeah, you want revenge? Yeah, give Stefon Diggs a bunch of 5-yard targets all day. That's fine with us. So, yeah, I mean, I think Stefon Diggs could end up with like double-digit catches here, and Houston loses easily. Like, I just and that's cool with Diggs, I think.
By the way, Brian Thomas Jr.'s real name is Nico Collins Jr. There's someone else.
I like that. I'm into that.
Someone else actually wants to make plays down the field. Tank Dell, by the way, I wish I hadn't been right about him, but why were people excited about Tank Dell coming in the year? I really don't understand.
He was really good last year. You may not remember this, but he was really good.
I do remember. I had him in every league last year when he was a value, and before there was so much target competition.
Completely over for him.
It's over. Yeah, his career is over.
No, not his career, but for now.
Tank, please. Dynasty team does need you to revive. Denny, the question said Joe Mixon immediate RB1 if he returns, but I don't know, he's not practicing still. I thought surely Joe Mixon will actually be back this week. Mm-hmm. Now we have no idea if he's even going to be back. If he is back, it'll probably be hard to trust him as an RB1, would it not?
Yeah, I thought that they were selling that ankle injury short. Like I saw that injury, and I am not a doctor, but as soon as it happened, I was like, that's 7 weeks, like instantly. Like there's just no way that guy can come back from that. So we have probably Cam Akers again. He's been pretty bad.
What happened to Damian? Is Damian Pierce is he? I mean, I know he was hurt. Is he on IR?
He remains hurt. He remains hurt. Remains not practicing.
Bobby Slowick is not getting anything out of first downs. He is
fraud B.
He's trying to be Shanahan, and it's really handicapping this Houston offense, I think. But I will say that this is a good matchup just on paper on my spreadsheet. Buffalo, 4th most extreme run funnel this season. Opponents have a 54% neutral pass rate against the Bills. The Bills are allowing the most yards before contact per rush. Now, does that have to do with Derrick Henry ripping off a 180-yard touchdown?
Cannot tell.
Yes, it does. But the Bills were top 5 going into last week in that category. So what I'm saying is the Bills. Here's what the Bills want. They want the Texans to run into a soft front or a light box, and they want checkdowns to Diggs all day. And I think that's what they'll get.
CJ Stroud, is this his fault or is this all Bobby's fault?
No, it's all Bobby's fault. Stroud is doing what he can, but it's all Bobby's fault.
Stroud's got to just blow up the structure. There was a few times last year with CJ Stroud, I'm the captain now.
He needs to do it.
He needs to do it. This is dismal football. Dismal football, the approach from Bobby Slowick. Let our man free. CJ Stroud, Bobby. Let our man free. Dalton Kincaid. Kyle still not getting any routes. What's the latest in Dalton Kincaid and the Bills wide receiver core?
Well, I'm looking at the receivers, and it's frustrating, I guess, in a way, because you have OC Joe Brady telling us we need to get Curtis Samuel more involved. And you're like, well, what's going on there? What elite receivers do they have on the field that are preventing him from getting there? And it's Keon Coleman, who really just can't get open unless his team's designing a target for him. I think like 9 of his 13 targets are first read targets. He's got a 9% target share on targets that aren't first read, as in you scheme him the ball, it gets to him. You don't scheme the ball and he's nowhere to be found. Mac Hollins, just a true wind sprinter who's really
Mac Hollins is in shape, man. That guy is in shape.
In shape without shoes. He does not like shoes. He goes barefoot to every practice. He walks to every practice. I don't know what he contributes other than being a very athletic looking guy. And Khalil Shakir, who's now banged up. He missed practice on Wednesday. I haven't seen the Thursday report. So I don't know. To me, the receivers are Khalil Shakir is healthy. You play him. Otherwise, I don't really see how anyone starts.
Even Shakir, I kind of started tie breaking against him. Like, oh, wow, please, 5 catches, 43 yards. Wow. Yeah, couldn't have done it without that. And yeah, sure, I just lost 130 to 104. But thanks for that, man.
Hater.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that also makes him the wide receiver 9 overall. 5 for 40 is one of the best performances you'll find out there. So but I get your point, is that I do think he's the archetype of player who I don't know exactly what ceiling he has, especially the way he's being used now. He used to be the deep slot, I don't want to say gimmick, but he would fly down the field, wasn't always open, but made big plays. He's been almost the exact opposite. He's got an 8 out of round 5. I believe he's operating more as what we think of a slot now. It's just the PPR scam kind of guy. So I still think I'm starting him, but I get your point. Point taken.
Yeah, he should have a better game if his usage continues to this year. But I don't even know if the Bills want any of their pass catchers to have a better game.
I don't think they do. They're not playing football like they want to score points in that fashion.
I mean, Josh Allen has said, like, I like my receivers not complaining about targets or touchdowns, and so they're good with this.
They are good. By the way, Matt Collins going barefoot everywhere. It seems like someone who clicked on the For You tab one time. It's all think influencer. Be like, you're gonna live to 92 if you step on the grass with your feet for 10 seconds a day.
Gosh, you're right. Oh man.
On the Dalton Kincaid front, I mean, I'll get to the point about the offense in a second. 22% target share through the past 3 weeks. He is getting a good cut of the pie, but as we just mentioned, they don't want to pass the football a ton, and it has worked in most games. That's not true of every game. Won't be true. This should be a shootout. I don't know if it will be, but
it will.
This game has a 55-point total in 2020. Like this game is one of 5 totals over 50 points in 2020, but it's 2024, and it's just not that.
This game's 53.5 4 years ago, and it can't even get to 50 right now. I can't even get particularly close to 50 right now. What have they done to our beautiful game? What have they done to our beautiful podcast? We'll be right back after this. Sorry. Oh, dear. All right. We will be right back after this. I can't do it. All right, folks. Yeah, we'll be right back. Dominate this NFL season with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Get weekly rankings, start sit advice, DFS analysis, and betting tools. Use promo code season20 for 20% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. Trying to regain my composure.
Sorry, I'm losing it.
Sorry. That was every once in a while a joke will put everyone. It wasn't that funny on its own, but we had been building toward it. We've been building toward losing it for no reason.
Now I've got the giggles.
So, by the way, reminder: this next game is the one we're supposed to go faster on. By the way,
okay.
That's because it's the Raiders at the Broncos. The aimless Raiders and Broncos meet up with the bookmakers, expecting south of 36 points. Denny Carter, where are the targets flowing in this Raiders offense with Devontae Adams trying to get traded?
All right, real quick. Got to start the Broncos defense. They are going to smother the Raiders. No doubt about that. So last week without Adams, Las Vegas was 11% below its expected drop back rate. Minshew dropped back just 26 times. That left very little volume for anybody but Jacoby Myers, who was targeted on 40% of his routes, which led to 10 targets. That was nice. Brock Bowers, only 3 targets. His slot usage has absolutely collapsed over the past couple weeks, which stinks. Trey Tucker is like a trick play guy and now running a lot of routes.
Trey Tucker like making like kickflip compilations.
Yeah, I like, he's a dog. I like him. I think you could do worse, but we have to remember that like last week was a nightmare as far as volume goes. One thing, I know we're supposed to go quick here. One thing,
all right.
It does seem like the Browns, who the Raiders played last week, are becoming a very pronounced run funnel, right? Because their run defense is so much worse than their pass defense, and that makes sense.
And they don't score points, so you can it's okay if you score 17.
Exactly.
The Browns haven't gotten to 20 this year, so do whatever you want.
I could be off here, but I do think the Raiders are going to try to do the ground and pound thing here.
With Brock Bowers, real quick, I mean, do we think it's because not that defenses weren't accounting for Brock Bowers, but maybe they were caught by surprise, like just how heavily he was featured in weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like to me in weeks 3 and 4, like defense is like, all right, the Bowers kid is ready. Like we got to treat him like he's already a star in the league. And
opposing defenses started the year, rookie tight end, those guys never pan out. And they're like, okay, this one's different, but now we have that knowledge.
Not a film take. I have no idea how they're actually defending Brock Bowers. I've kind of wondered if that's what has been going on, though. Kyle, is it back to situation normal in the Broncos backfield where Tyler Bidet was making a move on Javonte Williams' starting job, suffered the really weird, unfortunate injury? It doesn't seem like it was too serious, thankfully, but after Bidet got hurt real early in that game against the Jets, Javonte Williams and Julian McLaughlin both basically had their first good games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the offense isn't good, and neither is Javonte, so it's really hard to get excited, but he is the team's clear RB1, as you said, especially with Bidet probably not playing for at least this week. I don't really know what they'll do with him going forward.
Sean Payton is the most opaque guy in the world with injuries, too.
Also, yeah, we're not going to get any useful information from him. So, Jaleel has seen 27 carries to Javante's 40. And despite that, he has 15 missed tackles forced, and Javonte only has 10. He's better in yards after contact per attempt. He's better in rush yards over expected per attempt. And I think he should get more work, but he does not profile as a team's clear lead back. He's just like, he was a dominant player in college, but he's just a small dude. I understand that you can't give this guy 15 or 20 touches a game. But man, we should at least push the number as high as we can until we find the limit of efficiency, because we have found the limit for Javante's touches while still being efficient. And we hit it 2 years ago. So Javonte RB3-ish. I don't get what the inefficient
he's in the top 24, dude. If you look at the rankings, he's got to be in the top 24. There's too many other way more pronounced committees.
Can I get an either or on someone who's at 25, 6, and 7?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the ranks real quick here. Javonte Williams or Devin Achane.
Oh, Achane.
Really?
Yeah. What's the difference between these two offenses? They're both terrible, but I think one of the players is good.
The Broncos offense is the Dolphins are making the Broncos look like the 80s 49ers.
Yeah. We'll see. 60 passing yards. Real
Javonte Williams or Trey Sermon this week?
Oh, Trey Sermon by a mile.
Mm-hmm. If Taylor sits, yeah.
Obviously, if Taylor sits, yeah.
Taylor sits, Denny. Come on, man. Javonte Williams or Rashad White?
Oh, this is a good one. I think it's White, but we're roughly at my line.
Javonte or Ramondre Stevenson, who, remember, his coach publicly mused about benching on Wednesday.
Yeah. I guess I'm fine with Javonte there.
Denny, by the way, do you have anything to say on Madison and Zamir White, or are we kind of already reached the end of what we can say about this?
It looks like Zamir White is not practicing with a groin injury.
News to me.
Yeah, well, I did find a way to figure that. I went to rotoworld.com.
I've been meaning all day to do
to visit that website. Is that where this ends?
Yeah, it's a good website. I think folks should check it out. But so I that would mean a lot of Alexander Madison. What a bleak situation. I mean, Zamir White, probably the worst starting running back in the NFL. Alexander Madison, barely better.
Maybe the worst number 2 running back.
Yeah, maybe the worst number 2. Gosh, they couldn't get one. Emmanuel Wilson from the Packers would be cooking right now if he were the Raiders RB1.
Listen, Dylan Laube is ready and waiting.
Yeah,
I don't know what they don't see in the Ferrari that they got in the garage, but I would get him out there on the field. The Packers visit Los Angeles, California as 3.5-point favorites. I would say home favorites. The stadium will be totally dominated by Packers fans, Kyle. Fantasy managers are pinning all their hopes and dreams on the Packers' comeback-aided Week 4 box scoring game script. Now, we know Jordan Love will not be dropping back 60 times against this absolutely atrocious Rams defense. But can Jayden Reed, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 aficionados, and Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver 3 hopefuls, get what they're looking for out of this Packers offense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were talking about this in our DMs. Jayden Reed's been really good with Jordan Love on the field. I think 138 and 139 yards in their 2 games that they played together. Most importantly, this is a really easy matchup for the Packers. I get that they probably do understandably want to run the football, but when they drop back to throw, even Love, at probably not full health yet, gets a defense that ranks 31st in EPA per dropback. Reed is 3rd in the NFL in yards per route run. He's top 20 in ESPN's open score and PFF receiving grade. And it's another cover 3 matchup. The Rams don't run it as much as the Colts do, but they do run it a lot. 8th most in the NFL, I believe. And Reed has eaten that up so far this year. Wicks, I think it's a little more tenuous, but also our standards are obviously lower. You're picking up Wicks and dropping them into your flex. And this is more anecdotal. It's not as nerd statty. In the 3 games, he's gotten over 70% snap share in his entire career. 6 for 97, 5 for 78 and 2, 661 and 2. Albeit I don't think we can predict multi-touchdown performances. When they put him on the field, he gets the football.
Jayden Reed, I think, is over 80 yards, by the way, his past 4 games with Jordan Love starting. In the regular season, now in the playoffs, he had a really bad playoffs. Don't look up his playoff box scores, Denny. Denny, who do we even care about on the Rams right now? There's lots of people getting 5 weekly targets. They're not really turning them into anything. Demarcus Robinson predictably faded to dust the second anyone talked about him over the summer. Jordan Whittington, though, doing a few cool things. Do we care about any Rams right now?
Yeah, Whittington led all Rams pass catchers with 8 targets last week. Tutu Atwell saw 6 targets, 40% of the air yards, which I think is notable. The Packers are one of the few remaining pass funnel defenses, which obviously I'll mention in the piece tomorrow. And I think that means, especially because I think that Jordan Love and this Packers offense will have their way really with the LA defense. I think that the Rams could be forced into a somewhat pass heavy approach here. Sean McVay has tried to remain extremely run heavy with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp sidelined. I don't know if he can do that here. So, I think that there is a path to Atwell and Whittington being interesting from a volume standpoint, but you're not trying to jam them by any means.
I cannot believe Demarcus Robinson didn't pan out.
I can't, I thought that career journeyman would pan out.
I did too. Tutu Atwell, by the way, he's not a journeyman yet, but man, Tutu is someone they never use until they have to. And then every time they do use him, he's like, dude, I get 80 yards every game. Like, maybe throw me the ball.
Probably not bad. And they have him, and they put him in spots, thankfully, where he can't be jammed up. He's so small. He's like 150 pounds, right? And so they do move him around in a way that makes him able to get downfield. 40% air yard share. I think we need to note that.
Packers backfield committee ? Kyle, where it's really been like 60% of the snaps for Josh Jacobs and 40% for Emmanuel Wilson somehow over the past 2 weeks. That includes one Jordan Love start and one Malik Willis start. Josh Jacobs honestly looked like their best skill player to me last week, at least before Reed and Wicks went like totally nuts in the second half. But I don't understand. This seems like Matt LaFleur cannot quit committees. Is that becoming a pretty legitimate concern at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you laid out the snap share. The carry share has followed suit in that Josh Jacobs just isn't the dominant, I get all the touches kind of player that he was in his peak season in Las Vegas or in like week 1 and 2. Maybe the sort of argument against that is that these last 2 weeks aren't really going to be that predictive. Love's first game back in a very wonky game script where they got blown out early, but they didn't throw in the flag and they actually came back, made it very close. And then, of course, Malik Willis games. You don't want to read too much into those. But, I mean, LaFleur told us all summer, every time the backfield was asked about, times where the backfield wasn't asked about, that he liked a committee. He liked having multiple backs who could do multiple things. And then they do that thing. I think we have to take that roughly at face value.
He always does it to his detriment, too, where like, hey, buddy, Aaron Jones seems to be 40 times better than A.J. Dillon. Maybe you should look into that, Coach LaFleur.
Emmanuel Wilson's good.
He's good. He's pretty good. He actually is good, by the way. I had a final thought on that. Josh Jacobs, what were we talking about? Whatever. Doesn't matter. We're talking now about the Saints at the Chiefs, who are squaring off on Sunday Night Football with a total wheezing to 42.5 to anyway used to be a country. The story here is the Chiefs' post-Rashee Rice offense. Is it as simple as saying Travis Kelce gets his targets back, which you have already said on the show, and Xavier Worthy has to get more involved?
I like that you're used to the word wheezing, by the way.
I was going to note that too. It was very good.
Really good, because that's what it feels like here. First of all, I think this is a KC blowout win spot, personally.
And curious. You say the Chiefs stink and are never good and don't play offense anymore, and you're predicting.
Have you? But the people, the team they're playing is much worse. Kelce led with 9 targets last week. Importantly, he was targeted in 29% of his routes. That was only at 14% from week 1 to 3. So I think there was a concerted effort to get him the ball before the Rashee Rice injury. And then after the Rashee Rice injury, it was just, we're just going to funnel it to Kelce. Wanted to note Jeremy Fowler from ESPN thinks Juju Smith-Schuster will sort of kind of take Rashee Rice's spot, which makes.
And Pat, you said the offense is going to get better without Rashee Rice.
No. First off, I said it. Hold on. I said it might get better in fantasy. I said it would not get better in real life.
Juju Smith-Schuster will make it better for fantasy.
It might be forced to play more fantasy-friendly offense by jamming looks to Travis Kelce and getting Xavier Worthy.
Yes.
Okay, the 35-year-old tight end with declining efficiency is going to get more looks, and that's going to be better. Got it.
So here's what I want to say for just the long term. If your league mate who has Travis Kelce is not buying into what happened last week and is still frustrated by the first 3 weeks, maybe try to acquire him, because I do think that with the Rice injury, Kelce now has a runway to tight end 1 overall.
He does. And Kelce, by the way, sometimes looks like he's wheezing going down the field. Like, did Travis Kelce just smoke 2-pack of cigarettes? Zoomers, if you don't know what cigarettes are, you can
watch an old movie.
Yeah. Watch even now, every movie still by any auteur director, like, I don't know, man. I don't know if everyone was smoking 24 hours a day in 2006. Like, I don't really remember that. It's like, anyway, Kareem Hunt, easiest backfield ever, ? Kyle. Backfield takeover ever.
Oh,
I mean, his competition was a guy who wears 42. That's got to be pretty easy, being honest. It's either 42 or 44. I don't remember which numbers.
That's like a classic plays a real RB once.
Yeah.
Immediately becomes the leader. Yeah.
And, Steele playing, I don't know if you call it out of position, because he was a legitimate running back in college, I believe at UCLA and Bowling Green, if I remember correctly. But he's sort of a tweener in the way they use him. At least they used him in the summer in their practices. Immediately comes in as a tweener and fumbles twice. And they have a veteran guy who knows the system. Does seem like an easy takeover, and that's exactly what he did. We got an early Steele fumble. Hunt ends up rushing 14 times. He adds 2 receptions. The rest of the backfield sees a combined 7 carries and 1 catch. I think Steele got 1 touch after his fumble. He did get, 2 targets that went uncaught, but for the most part, he seemed to be pretty much phased out of the backfield at that point. With the only sort of caveat here is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire returned to practice. I believe he had his practice window open, so they have 21 days to pull him off the NFI list. He's another, I don't think he's that good, but he does, in a very technical sense, know the system. It would just be another frustrating, this guy got 7 carries, and one of them was a touchdown. And that's what ruined my Kareem Hunt RB2 aspirations. So I do think the moment he gets thrown into the mix, don't know if that happens this week, it just becomes more fraught with risk.
The Saints have largely been able to cover for how bad their rush defense is because of the crazy blowout scripts in week 1 and 2. But I think that they are primed to get gouged on the ground. They're giving up the 3rd most yards before contact per rush. I really think Kansas City can just destroy them on the ground. And Kansas City's, as bad as their offense has been, their running game, by all the nerdy metrics, has been very good. I think that's how they're going to do it in this game.
I think Kyle made a few important points to the Kareem Hunt, where I do believe he's taken over the backfield, quote unquote, but it's a little fair to wonder what that will mean. Like if he can even routinely get 60% of the snaps, and I wouldn't be shocked. I would probably be surprised, but week 4 could even end up maybe his best box score. I feel like it was like 80 yards from scrimmage, and this could be a total morass once Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back. And we'll see. I'm optimistic. I have him in the top 20. I think RB19, Kareem Hunt. So by the way, I forgot this is in Kansas City. Derek Carr. This is a nightmare.
Yeah, and listen, Spagnuolo is familiar with Carr from Carr's days.
He's played him way too much.
He's going to pressure him all game. Carr's going to collapse. This is an absolute just disaster spot for the Saints.
I was going to say Chiefs don't even have to score a lot. Didn't the Saints give up 2 touchdowns on offense/special teams with I think a Shaheed fumble on a punt or something? And I don't know what was the other one. Was it a pick 6?
Pick 6.
Pick 6 on
Carr pick 6. You don't say.
On a wide receiver screen, it was particularly bleak as far as Carr pick 6s go. And by the way, the Saints are just gonna do listen, Derek. I know you played the Chiefs a lot, but they're not gonna be ready for the new stuff we're doing this year. And they basically have like a Tim Robinson character go into motion, and the Chiefs defense just looks at each other like, I'm gonna go blow up Derek Carr on this play.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention the Saints have given up on the cool stuff. By the way,
that's strange.
They don't do play action anymore because they're facing negative script. They think so. Clint Kubiak thinks that you have to have a lead to do play action. You don't. You can do play action at any point. It's just as successful as any other point, right? Clint, if you're listening, do play action. Don't just completely abandon it the minute
when
you get
Clint
down by
gets to the
point.
when he gets to the second chapter of the modern NFL analytics playbook, this offense is going to take right back off. But he only finished the first chapter where it was like, use pre-snap motion. He was like, I can do that. But then he had his own independent thoughts, and they were bad.
Even Mike Vrabel let Ryan Tannehill do play action in any situation. Because
that's
the only way he was good. Message the Saints: Derek Carr is not good at anything other than that. Just let him do that. Real quick, Rashid Shaheed pushing for weekly wide receiver 3 value. Denny had a good week 4 aside from the muffed punt that cost them the game.
Yeah, he did. I thought I had some Shaheed stats, but I'm actually struggling to find them. Anyway, he's still pretty volatile. as far as like his profile goes. I will say, I know what I wanted to mention. His air yards per target went from 15 on the season last week to 8. And so if we get more of that sort of usage, he's way more reliable. I also think that the Saints will be forced to drop back and throw a lot. That should just create some like disgusting sort of cheap volume for Olave and everybody else.
Or a lot of Derek Carr sacks. That's hard to say.
Oh, yeah, no, that too. And yeah, catastrophic stuff, obviously, yeah.
I was going to say Shaheed's ADOT went down last week. How many 50-yard touchdowns did he have? Because when he had a high ADOT, he was doing that a lot.
Yeah, all right, settle down. Real quick, Rashid Shaheed or Xavier Worthy? Denny, go.
I actually would go Shaheed.
Kyle.
I kind of think that's right too. Denny called Worthy fancy Tutu Atwell on like the Tuesday show, and I was like, I hate that kind of like I can see it.
Stop it.
Yeah, no, he's not good. Worthy.
Oh my gosh. I'm Xavier Worthy top 30 this week. You heard it here first. By the way, I remember what I wanted to say about Josh Jacobs earlier. I forgot. The Rams do have an atrocious run defense.
So they're bad on defense in a lot of facets.
Maybe Josh can prove the haters wrong this week.
Finally,
rounding back to something resembling full health, the San Francisco 49ers are touchdown plus home favorites against the Cardinals, Kyle. With George Kittle and Deebo Samuel both back and producing, though. What does it mean for a slumping Brandon Ayuk and a breaking out Juwan Jennings? The Cardinals play zone, which we always told means it's a Deebo week. Just the full health 49 skill core. What are we getting?
Yeah, last week I thought we were going to return to normalcy in terms of how the offense operated because they, outside of Christian McCaffrey, had everyone back. And we saw part of that. Juwan Jennings in week 3, 90% of the routes because he was one of the only receivers left standing. And then they get the other guys back last week and he gets 67% of the routes, a very normal Kyle Shanahan's wide receiver 3 type of route share. Deebo and Ayuk over 80%. I think Ayuk was over 90%. The less normal aspect of that was Juwan Jennings saw 5 first read targets, which led the team. 5 of his 6 targets were of the first read variety. They just kept doing that thing where they designed plays for Juwan Jennings. On the other hand, in your heart of hearts, do you just believe that Juwan Jennings is all of a sudden having a breakout year? My opinion on that subject is no. So I'm just going to bet on it going back to normal anyways, even though last week was not, we didn't get there yet.
My opinion is that Kyle Shanahan refuses to speak to Brandon Ayuk. And so
did you see the clip of him telling Ayuk he was wearing the wrong colored shorts?
I did.
Yes. It's like, this is some real like father-son psychodrama going on between these two guys. It's honestly getting out of hand. What's gotten out of hand, Denny, is Kyler Murray struggles. Been a really, really slow start for Mr. Kyler. Are we starting to get concerned? It's just more of the same for a guy for, let's be real, has never been good.
He is not good. His average depth of target crashed back to earth last week against Washington after spiking in week 2 to 3. He stopped throwing downfield. Kyler Murray's taking a sack on 23% of his pressures, which is really high, one of the highest in the league. It's just your offense just can't go with that sort of pressure to sack ratio. Murray's throwing downfield at the league's 5th highest rate, which is nice for guys like Marv, as the kids say.
Maserati.
I still don't know. When people say Marv, I'm like, Marv what? Who?
There's a guy named Marv?
I instantly think Marv Levy.
Yeah, man, Marv Levy or Home Alone, 2 staples from the early 90s on NBC.
Yeah, I'm not young. He's throwing downfield at 5th highest rate, but he's only completed 5 of 17 of those downfield throws, so those haven't been good. The rushing is not really there. He does not have more than 5 rushing attempts in a game this year. He hasn't
reached 50 yards yet either.
Right. He has 16
true?
total.
He hasn't reached 50 yards
rushing. Yeah.
He has 16 total
in
rushing
a game
through 4 games. There are basically no RPOs in this offense. They've completely abandoned play action over the past 3 weeks. I think this is a really awful, terribly designed offense. And also Murray is not good.
I was wrong, Kyle, by the way. Sorry about that.
I knew you're wrong.
Is what I know. What Kyler's not reaching. Kyler, man, just this was his last chance. Like, he was set up so well this season. Like, it was all right there for him. And he's just, this guy's not serious. He's just not serious. He's physically, he can do it. He's not serious. I really just think that's the take on Kyler. There's no reason for him to not be better. He's smart enough. He's physically talented enough. I don't know why.
And also this offense, this Arizona offense is using Marvin Harrison Jr. as you would maybe like a 5th round flyer at receiver. Like use him, like throw it to him short, like design stuff, like force the ball into his hands.
I feel like that might be Kyler. He gets like really catty about that. He used to get annoyed, I think, about having to feed DeAndre. And he kind of stopped doing it for a while. I was like, oh, you think he's better than me?
Well, he said it's not his job.
Where to put the ball? You don't think I know
Yeah,
where to
that's
put
true.
the ball?
It's a not my job thing.
Yeah, it's not my job. You think it's not my I think this happened. I just happen to think Michael Wilson's open all the time. That's why I targeted him 8 times for 62 yards. I don't know. Maybe Marv should get open. They're showing him film of Marv just like running.
Yeah, show obviously the first the Bills play where Marv is wide open.
Yeah, I know, in the end zone to win the game.
Yes, correct.
By the way, McBride should be back this week from concussion.
So that would be a big development for Kyler Murray. Maybe he will be good after all. We'll be right back after this. It's an inter-conference showdown. It's Sunday night in Week 5. Catch Dak Prescott and the Cowboys take on T.J. Watt and the vaunted Steelers defense in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Coverage kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Which brings us to the Dallas Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers. This being the modern NFL, the total is hovering in the low 40s. The Steelers are 2 to 3 point favorites at home. Denny Carter, they're visiting as narrow dogs, the Cowboys. But we're going to start with what are we talking? I can't read anything I'm writing. We finally got a Justin Fields explosion game, Denny. Though it came in a Pittsburgh loss. Mike Tomlin's not going to like that. Do we think Fields gets cut loose this week, or does he get reined in versus a Cowboys defense that absolutely loves to give up big plays?
Yeah, I would lean toward he's reined in. In their 3 wins this year, Pittsburgh has been 11% under its expected dropback rate, which is super run heavy. In the loss last week, they were only 2% under that rate. So they had that going for him. I will say Fields, has, like any sort of Konami code rushing quarterback, he has a nice floor based on his rushing production. He has at least 8 rushes in 3 of 4 games this season. Importantly, Justin Fields has 7 rushing attempts inside the 10, leading all quarterbacks. Look at this Cowboys front 7 is generally small. They're going to be without 2 of their starters. They're giving up the 6th most yards before contact per rush. I think that we're going to see the Steelers play bully ball, or at least try to play bully ball against them and just grind it out. And with Najee, with design runs for Fields. So I think you can start Fields, but this whole thing from last week where he's going to be dropping back a whole lot more, there's very little chance of that happening here.
Real quick, does that mean in one of my home leagues, should I start Fields or Burrow, Denny?
Fields, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Fields. I'm not actually sure. I'm going Burrow right now, I think.
Yeah, give me Burrow. I think, Denny, to your point, they do not want to let Fields loose. They've told us that through the first 3 games. And after the game, Mike Tomlin came out and said, he was like, yeah, it was not the best game from Fields. I think sloppy is specifically the word he used to describe, not the entirety of the game for him, but some aspects of how he played. It's clear that they don't want to have Fields play hero ball, and it worked. That's the thing, is it was successful to get them to 3-0. So I totally agree that maybe some design runs. I think he's a good high floor play, but they do not want him to reach a fantasy ceiling. Right. I think that's like relatively accurate. You probably don't want Fields playing hero ball a ton. No. And yeah, it's going to be a ton of running, both from Fields and a ton, sickeningly, from Najee Harris.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kyle, we have to go back to the well with Najee this week, even after that total stink bomb. Yeah,
Warren not practicing, Cordell Patterson not practicing. The third, well, now he's like the 4th, but he's going to be the 2nd running back is Aaron Shamklin. I believe he got his first NFL snaps last week. He's a Harvard guy who played in one of the spring leagues briefly. He is, a deep tertiary sort of practice squad level player. That means a lot of carries for Najee Harris. The Steelers, I believe, are both 4th in running back carries and 4th in running back targets. No surprise, Arthur Smith uses his running backs a lot, and now he's down to just one of them.
Producer Adam, by the way, is wondering, he doesn't know this is going to be an easy 3-0 answer. Yeah. He's wondering Fields or Mahomes. We're like, none of us are even considering starting Mahomes.
Fields. Yeah.
Correct.
So Justin Fields. I hope everyone's happy about the state of this NFL game. Denny, real quick, is it Jalen Tolbert's season with Brandon Cooks out for the Cowboys this week?
It could be. He's narrowly 3rd in pass routes on the year among Dallas receivers, 2nd in catches. He leads the Cowboys with a 14 ADOT. I mean, it probably just means more looks for Ferguson and Lamb. But you might throw in Tolbert, get crazy. You know,
he's pushing for the top 40. I think I'm like wide receiver 42.
Yeah, here's what I say: live a little. Put Tolbert in your lineup.
I will never live a little.
I would never live a little. That's for sure.
A pair of teams trying to turn their seasons around and somewhat succeeding. The Panthers and Bears meet up in Chicago with the Bears getting about 3 or 4 points at home. Kyle, we've seen better play from Caleb Williams, but have yet to really get a fantasy eruption. Is this finally that spot, or does the 41.5 game total scream otherwise?
Yeah, I tend to lean on the game total and saying Vegas has this game pegged roughly correctly on how much scoring we should see. To the Bears' credit, they're 3.5 point favorites at home, albeit, so they should score some points. And Caleb has played better over the past 2 weeks, but it's not an impressive team total. It's a low game total, and Caleb Williams, quote, playing better is because he started off at such a low point through the first 2 weeks.
Or scored by 20%.
Well, you know, the number 1 overall pick right before him is still somehow worse, but he is 24th in passing grade and 22nd in YPA in a clean pocket over the past 2 weeks, which is fine, but he's not even cracking the top 20, and he's not running the football a lot either. He has 1 game over 20 yards, so he's mostly just a not that good pocket passer. It's a good matchup, but does he rank even particularly close? Like, are we considering him in the QB1 range? No. It's more like he's the QB 15, 16. I think that's fine. It is a good matchup. He is playing better, but you know, it's Sam Darnold clearly over him, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, a lot of the guys who are in the QB1 mix, and he's in the mix to be in the QB1 mix in a week or two.
Real quick, Trevor Lawrence versus the Colts or Caleb Williams versus the Panthers?
Trevor?
I think I would go with Trevor.
Trevor's big play hunting out there. He's not great at it, but that's the one thing, as Denny pointed out, I think is what they do is like, I don't know, Trevor, go out there and throw a 30-yard bomb. And he's like, I can't do that often. And he's like, then we lose.
I think, you know, going forward, I think that the Bears' plan is to rely on their defense, which is very good, to hide their struggling rookie quarterback and to try to just get by and shorten the game every week. And that it worked last week. They were 12% under their expected drop back rate. They won, so they're going to keep doing it.
Denny, real quick, Joe Flacco or Caleb Williams? Don't pretend. This is like when when they build latency into an app to make you think that like it's working hard. We know you're going to say Flacco.
They put the wheel spinning, so it really makes you feel like, they're physically churning gears. Denny's physically churning his gears.
I would start pretty much anyone over Caleb Williams.
Oh, there you go.
Denny, Bears receivers right now. Keenan Allen back in the mix. Keenan looked very dusty last week. Clearly not 100% healthy. What do we say about the Bears?
I love, by the way, that the preseason reports of hefty Keenan Williams were quickly dismissed, and as soon as he gets on the field, what do we see? Anyway, the 3 wide receivers for the Bears last week, Odunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, they split up. You ready for this, guys? 11 targets. They got to divide 11 targets between them. Like I said, Chicago way under their expected drop back rate, led to 23 pass attempts for Caleb Williams. That's going to be the plan. That's going to be the plan going forward. Will they be able to pull that off every week? Probably not. But you know, it is what it is. We have to accept that. Keenan ran about half of his routes from the slot, kind of mixed in with DJ Moore. It's ugly. It's ugly. I thought we were going to see just disgusting drop back volume going forward, but it looks like the Bears are trying to win. So they're going to keep the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands.
Okay, real quick, we're running short on time. We talked about this a lot earlier in the week, but is it Xavier Legette season in this tough matchup with like Denny said, a really good Bears defense?
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but he's a first-round rookie who the team is trying actively to get him the ball. He's got a really strong first read target share last week. It was 28% of the team's first read looks, and he converted that to a total of 24% target share, and he got up to a full-time role, an 88% route rate. You know, it's a tough matchup, and he's going to take his lumps. He had bad drops last week, but that's what we knew we were getting into in the first place. What wide receiver 4 ranking feels fair for him, maybe on the lower end of that, but inside the top 48, you can check me on the rankings. But
I just want to say mea culpa on Xavier Legette. He's going to be good. Nothing I can do about it.
I don't know.
Great call by David Tepper, who, again, like Pat said, saw him once at a bar.
That was once at his stadium.
At his stadium.
Playing
at the Duke's Mayo Classic.
He was at the bar at the stadium, though.
playing an 8th tier bowl game. That's the process, and it worked.
It was a season opening. I think he played 2 games there. One was a season opening, like Mayo Bowl or something.
It's the Duke's Mayo Classic, not the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which is different yet played at the same.
That's right. It was the Classic.
Bank of America Stadium.
Right.
I think the Duke's Mayo Classic. I don't know if it's every year. I don't know, but it's South Carolina, North Carolina, and they play in a stadium that neither of them are actually that close to.
The Mayo Bowl in the Carolinas. The Seahawks return home from a Lions humbling as solid favorites against the Giants, Denny. With no Malik Neighbors, is Wan'Dale Robinson about to make the PPR cash machine go burr?
Oh, man, is he ever. Listen to this. Wan'Dale, first of all, being targeted on 30% of his pass routes. That is very strong. It's actually crazy considering that Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver 1. Neighbors is soaking up all this volume, and Wan'Dale's still getting there from a volume standpoint. Very rare. 90% of Wan'Dale's targets have come either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. Yeah. That's what we like. That's our scam. We love it. We are going to he's going to scam. He's going to have 18 receptions this week. If Neighbors is out.
Neighbors trending very strongly to being out. I do like the Giants aren't making any bones about it. Like now it seems like try to like cloak PPR scams. Like, no, it's we're using motion and stuff. And the Giants are just like, no, man. Like, listen. We know we're not winning. Like,
we stink.
Just getting this guy the ball. Like, that's all this is about. Man, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is not cool or innovative.
I'm not proud of this. You think I want to go out here and throw 2 targets to Wan'Dale Robinson? No, but that's what we're doing. We're doing it again next week.
Exactly. Speaking of not proud, the backfield led by Devin Singletary. He is banged up, Kyle. What if he's not playing? Is it Tyrone Tracy season?
Oh, God, I hope it is. I have some 0 RB teams that really need to see that Tyrone Tracy. He's outsnapped backup Eric Gray about 4-1 in terms of the backup opportunities. That's not a ton, so it's a small sample, and it's probably a committee, but I think he is the clear leader of the committee. In the first, I think it was the first preseason game, he clearly went out and got I'm the number 2 running back role. He gets hurt, but then he comes back and seems to have that exact same role in the regular season. I think he's a pretty clear, not quite 1-for-1 replacement, but a pretty clear I am the starter level backup. And it doesn't look like Devin Singletary is going to play. That one's much more up in the air. Neighbors seems pretty unlikely to play. But if Singletary is ruled out, check rotoworld.com. It's a great website that'll help you track stuff like this. If Singletary is ruled out, I'm probably putting Tracy in the top 24.
I probably won't get him in the top 24, but it really starts trailing off around the top 24. So I might actually have to eat my words on that. That is a class. Yeah, just keep it locked to Rotoworld. We'll keep you updated. Denny, Seahawks passing game check-in. Are we continuing to get what we want, which includes DK Metcalf going for 100 yards every week?
His target share is 23%. I mentioned that on Tuesday's show. JSN is at 21%, Lockett at 17%. I'm being greedy here, but would like to see DK.
Receivers are actually good. You just get them 20, they're fine. They don't need all the fake, like, oh, you can't produce unless you get a 30% target share.
Right.
You can if you're good.
and DK got kind of unlucky in week 4. I think you can start all these guys. I mean, the game script issues make me a little nervous here against the Giants because it's just
touchdown home favorites, 6 to 7 point home favorites.
Could get ugly, but 3 games in a row where the Seahawks are way over their expected drop back rate. We're getting what we wanted. Week 1 was not great, but the rest has been very good. So I think you can be confident in starting all 3 Seahawks receivers, and that you're definitely throwing in Geno and banking on him getting there before the game gets out of hand.
No Malik Neighbors is not great for these.
I know. Guys, I have a couple teams. I have 3 redraft teams with Neighbors and Metcalf, and I was looking forward to this so much.
Yeah. Denny, I have 15 freaking teams with Rice and Puka. I don't want to hear it.
I never heard of either of them. Sorry.
Yes, our Washington Commanders return home as field goal favorites versus the beleaguered Browns. Kyle, the story for Washington this week, beyond the burgeoning superstardom of Jayden Daniels, is the return of Austin Eckler, 1 game absence with a concussion. Brian Robinson has been pushing for RB1 value of late. What about with Eckler back in the lineup?
Robinson's banged up right now. We'll see in terms of him. Right. So, I saw that right before the show. I was like, well, that'll change my answer to this prompt. I'll talk about it for a second as if Robinson is playing. He is a freaking tough dude, so he might end up playing through this thing. But he was the RB17 in expected fantasy points through 3 weeks, which is really strong for him being what I think is fair to say a committee back with Austin Eckler there. And then last week, we saw Austin Eckler had 15% of the carries and 38% of the targets. That almost perfectly transferred to Jeremy McNichols, seeing 23% of the carries, 33% of, I said targets, I meant routes. He's the passing down back. They just kind of let Jeremy McNichols play the Austin Eckler role, and also it worked really well somehow. So I think his role was largely unchanged if he's healthy. I think we maybe got a little overexcited about him taking over the entire backfield. We were probably also underexcited about how good he was in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, Denny, what's the Browns defense? Are they a run funnel?
Denny was talking about this earlier. Teams run on them because they can't score a single point.
Yeah, they are pretty. They're not an extreme run funnel, but teams can get by on the ground. They can't really do it through the air.
Denny, is this an Amari Cooper eruption spot? The Commanders' great start has not featured great defense. What about Amari? What about Jerome Ford? And what finally might be a better overall environment for this Browns offense?
It should be. I mean, the Washington defense kind of freaked me out last week with how they looked against Arizona, but maybe the Cardinals are just that bad. Amari Cooper remains a despair yards all-star. He's not really good anymore, but he's seeing a lot of air yards.
You wait till Jameis Winston takes over. We are getting some insane lines.
Until he gets traded to the Chiefs. But
guys, listen, if it didn't happen, honestly, if they couldn't make the switch after losing to the Raiders without Devontae Adams, they're never going to make this switch. It's just not going to happen. I mean, Watson could get hurt or something, but they're never going to put Winston in there on their own volition. Anyway, Cooper, it looks like an eruption spot. Every week looks like an eruption spot because he's dominating air yards and targets so much. Jerry Jeudy had a weird spike game last week, sort of for his standards. So I think, you keep starting Amari Cooper, you keep starting Jerome Ford, because if you have Jerome Ford, you have maybe 1 or 2 games left of starting him, and then Nick Chubb comes back, and it is over for Ford.
Well, we'll see. Depending on how
over-ish.
Chubb could be over. For all
what I mean is, like, Ford would not see nearly the volume that he's seeing right now.
Yeah. Well, unless we get like Deontay Chubb. We have the Dolphins at the Patriots. I mean, is this 33.5? Or no, 35.5. Okay.
Oh, thank God. 35.5.
It's probably
it's a weather game. Like, that's how bad it is. This is indistinguishable from a game that has a blizzard in December.
This is a Kirk Ferentz game, Denny.
I have something because the folks need something on this game.
Do they?
Yes, they do. 41% neutral pass rate for the Dolphins without Tua. So they just literally can't throw it without him. They had 52 plays in trailing game script last week against Tennessee. They had a 45% pass rate on those plays.
How could you trail for 52 plays against Will Levis? My God.
Yeah, so I think Patriots win here. I think they establish it hard against the Dolphins, who have no way of moving the ball. Mike McDaniel has shown no ability to adjust, which really separates like the McVays and the Shanahans from him, LaFleur's. It's bleak, man. It's real bleak. This Dolphin season is real close to over.
By the way, the total has exploded actually to 36.5. I do think the Dolphins will win this game. The Patriots don't even want to win. They don't care about winning this game.
I guess I am underestimating how bad the Patriots are.
Yeah,
they're quite bad at football.
They're atrocious, utterly atrocious. Kyle, what is the state of the Patriots beyond? Yeah, potentially we teased it earlier. Ramondre benching ? Love when my coach talks about benching me openly to the public.
Yeah. So, Antonio Gibson has played really good football so far. He's third in rush yards over expected, third in yards after contact per attempt. Stevenson has been fine. He's top 20 in both as well. And the big issue is that Stevenson leads the NFL with 4 fumbles, or at least he leads running backs with 4 fumbles. Per FTN's Scott Spratt, I saw the stat and I thought it was funny. Wanted to credit him. Stevenson's rate of fumbling since entering the league in 2021 is second worst in the NFL. There's only one running back who fumbles the ball more than Ramondre Stevenson. Pat, I can see you laughing. You know the punchline is that the worst running back in fumble rate is Antonio Gibson. He has not fumbled yet this year, but This was the problem with him in Washington is he didn't do the running back stuff very well. And lo and behold, he didn't really play running back in college. So I don't have a ton of faith that he can just supplant the starter, albeit Stevenson is quite literally fumbling away the starting role. Antonio Gibson has done that plenty.
I thought you were going to say it was Derrick Henry, by the way, because it's always the very best running back.
Big Dog's good at football. Come on, he's good.
Adrian Peterson used to fumble twice a game.
Yes.
But yeah, I wonder why Amandre's fumbling so much. Could it be because he's the only good player and he's trying to do literally anything to gain yards? We will put our best people on this. We put our best people on the Week 5 slate. Kyle and Denny gave us super great stuff. They give us great stuff on the site all week. 32 stats from Kyle. If you didn't check out Waiver Wired earlier in the week, then we have Start 'em, Sit 'em from Kyle on Friday. The regression files are live from Denny. The funnel report's going to go live on Friday. Denny has his chat at noon Eastern on Friday. My rankings are out. They'll be updated throughout the week and weekend. So for Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back with you later.